Welcome. Thank you for joining us at Empowering Creatives to Live Their Dreams. I'm Jessica Osrek. Today we have a public relations and digital marketing leader who has been successfully growing his agency, Comprise, in the beautiful location of Boulder, Colorado, Doyle Albee. Welcome, Doyle.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, it's my pleasure. So I'm interested to know what sparked your passion for storytelling and how has it influenced your career in public relations and marketing?
It's a great question. I guess to start out with, I'm really bad at math, so I knew I had to do something else.
Okay.
But kidding aside, I just found myself drawn to journalism and those types of things. And my major in college was actually mass communications. And one of the things that I really started to find that I could enjoy on the public relations side is, as a reporter, you kind of get to say, I like that story, don't like that story, like that one, don't like that one. And our job is more to say, here's all these stories. How do we make them interesting and compelling and actionable for our clients? And sometimes you do have to say, not that one. I'm glad you have a new website, but we're not going to write a press release about that. But a lot of times it's you have a new software product or you have an update or you have a new location. How do we make that story compelling and interesting and the type of thing that a media person, and a media person now could be anything from a newspaper to a magazine to a blog to a podcast to television, and really make that interesting all the way across the board. And I just think that's such a fun way to spend my day, to be really honest with you. And I think we do a pretty good job of that.
Well, that does sound like a lot of fun, and you're clearly really good at it. Looking back at your experience and some of the brands that you worked with, how did your time with Coors Brewing Company shape your perspective on brand communications and marketing?
It was an interesting ride. I got there at a very interesting moment. I guess I'll go ahead and date myself, but in 1984, Bill Coors, who was, and I forget his title at the time, but I don't know if he was CEO, but certainly in the C-suite, had made a speech and was quoted in one of the, Denver had two major daily papers then, the Denver Post, which is still here, in the Rocky Mountain News, which is since shut down. And Bill was quoted the next day as saying, "Blacks lack the intellectual capacity to succeed." And while he said those words, he was speaking to a minority luncheon and talking about how do we turn the government, away from apartheid in South Africa and give it to a population. So what he meant was that the African American population there hadn't had the opportunity to go to school in many cases, learn business. You can't just say, "Here's the government, good luck with that." It was a great point. His words were obviously very, very poorly chosen. And so I had started the week before as an intern in the public relations department. My days were just filled with going to this meeting and going to that meeting and just watching kind of all hands as we went in to shape this. And I think Coors did a good job. We signed covenants with major organizations throughout the Black and Hispanic and all the different communities. We agreed to deposits in minority-owned banks, all sorts of things. It turned into a multi-year program, and it really shaped my time with Coors. Because I really learned kind of crisis from the ground up. And then switching gears over to the marketing side, that was when, hey, how can I interest you in selecting a Coors Light to have tonight instead of a competitive product? And that was, you weren't in crisis mode all the time. You got to be in creative mode. So I got a chance to work with Elvira for a few years for our Halloween promotion, which was a lot of fun. But it gave me kind of a holistic view of communications, learning how do you speak to a reporter when you're in a crisis situation, clear into how do you save 25 cents each on cardboard Elvira stand-ups for liquor stores when you're printing 500,000 of them, right, or 250,000. So it was a lot of fun. And all those things come into play now. Not that I'm printing, monster Elvira stand-ups for everybody, but when we do need to print, I put a staff together that understands print, and we can help counsel clients through that. So the key really is not to insist on telling your story where you want your story told, but to find where your audience is and then find the best way to tell them that story in those proper channels.
Mm. So do you feel that Coors ultimately made a positive impact after that initial statement?
I think so. I will tell you that what became the community relations department, which didn't exist before that, which really focused on building relationships with underserved communities. And when I left the company, that department had gone from 0 to close to 100 people. And you just did some great work within the communities. And I think, sometimes you're willing to learn from a mistake. It can be a really good thing. And I don't think Coors was necessarily doing a bad job in those communities before, but it wasn't a priority. It wasn't, or it wasn't the priority that it became after those comments. And so I think that, if you can make lemonade from lemons and really do some good work, and we had some bridge building to do. It was an unfortunate choice of words. One of the things we talk about here at Comprise when we go into these things is we believe that crisis communications has really 3 areas: ownership, empathy, and repair. Ownership. I did that. That was me. Empathy. I'm sorry. That wasn't my best moment right there. And I apologize to anyone that was hurt, offended, shocked, and then repair. And here's what we're going to do to fix it. And I think Coors went through all 3 of those stages with, yes, Bill said that. Poor choice of words. Here's what Bill meant. And here's what we're going to do to repair.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Well, it sounds like whether you were working on the PR or marketing side, your approach was very solution oriented.
I think it's really important to do that in both areas because they're a little hard to measure in some ways. And, especially fast forward to now, Google's really trained us that it's like from a click, I can tell how much Google charged me to the time they got to my website, to the time they bought my product. So I know that for every $1.62 I spend on Google, I sell $10 worth of products. And there's just this unbelievably straight line that goes through there. And I think that's really still really difficult to do. If I were to work with your company and get you in the perfect vertical publication, and it was a great article and we all felt good about it, draw me that straight line to, and we got 5 clients, 10 clients, 20 clients. It's really, really hard to do. And that's part of the reason we put together all the different things that we do, because that article's great, but what can you do to repurpose that? Can you put it on your socials? Can you email that to prospects and say, hey, did you see me in the Wall Street Journal, or whatever the case might be? So we want to make sure that something like that is not the end of the project, but it's almost the beginning of a new project, to your point, to come to the solution, which companies hire us to sell more product or sell more services. And you can do all wonderful things. And if you're not selling or helping sell or making the C-suite feel like this is part of our mix and we're getting good feedback and it's helping us close deals, it's hard to justify that ROI.
Mm-hmm. Right. Digital marketing there's definitely some upsides as far as the ROI.
Exactly.
So can you share the journey of founding your own PR firm and then eventually merging it to create Comprise? And what were your biggest lessons learned throughout that whole journey?
Oh gosh, how long do you have?
That's okay.
There were so
Go
many.
ahead.
There were so many. I don't remember the date, but I remember the exact day I wanted to work for myself. I was chatting with a colleague at Coors, and that year the raises were not good. We just did not have a good year as a company. And because of the way the raises were done on percentage basis, this person was 15 or so years ahead in his career from where I was. So even though I got a better rating, which he was happy to tell me, which I thought was odd in the moment, but I got a lower raise. And it kind of hit me that it's like, when you've got 6,500 employees, you have to have systems and processes. And I decided in that moment, I wasn't crazy about that. I didn't feel like I was in control of my own destiny. And so I really started to look into, what is this agency thing like? How could I be a part of that? What might work there? And had some more corporate stops along the way and got into technology, which is really, really my love and where the agency is focused now. And then decided to leave and start my own firm. Partnered with somebody for a while and took that over and merged that in with a larger firm here in Boulder, which became Doyle Albee Public Relations around 2011, give or take. and my business partner retired in, I want to say 15 or 16, I can't remember which. And so I bought the remaining shares of the company. And then in 2022, we rebranded to Comprise. The PR was just too strong out there. We do obviously a ton of PR, but in order to help the PR land better, we also do social media, content development, website development, creative development. And that PR was just too much. And the moment that we decided to change was when a 10-year client called and said, we really like working with you. Who would you recommend to build our website? Because we want to redo our website. And it was like, us? Oh, I didn't know you built websites. And we went, okay, we've got a branding issue here. And so Comprise was born in 2022, and we've had a solid run since then.
Wonderful. And we'll definitely dive into what you've been doing since then. So you've worked across diverse industries. You've worked across technology, healthcare, CPG. How do you adapt your approach to meet the unique challenges of each sector?
I think you've always got to start with, be it your customer, your end user, whatever nomenclature we want to use, in mind, and say, okay, what is going to truly serve that person? And what's the best way to reach them and help do that? You know, sometimes I joke about this. I'll get a call from somebody who'll say, hey, can you guys do Facebook ads? And my answer is frequently, yes, we can also buy billboards. But what is your goal? What are you trying to do? What's your product or service? Who are you trying to reach? What makes the most sense? And if you start there and move backwards, and then again, keeping that solution focused end game in mind that you talk about, we want to give you a solution that allows communications tactics to increase your business. It all comes down to that. And one of my favorite examples is we did some work with a company that made custom cremation urns. They had a tragedy in their family. Their son wished to be cremated, and they found that the options were not good, very, very limited. And so as a result, they founded a company to do just that for pets, for humans, for whatnot. And I remember we got them a story in Reuters and a story in a very small vertical all at the same time, or all right around the same time. And, of course, we were like, look, Reuters, it's great. And when we actually took a step back and looked at what moved their business, it was the small vertical geared towards the funeral industry versus the major national hit. And that really helped the light bulb go on to say, wouldn't turn down an interview with a Reuters or a Wall Street Journal or a New York Times. But I think too many agencies spend too much time trying to get these showcase marquee hits when, you can win a baseball game 12-zip with a whole lot of singles. If you can keep moving things around the bases, you don't need to hit a grand slam home run.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, that's a great example. So what does it mean to run your business the comprised way? And how do your values, mission, and vision guide your company?
We have just 5 values, and we write our values in I statements, not we statements. We want every employee to say, I am. And doing things the comprised way really means to us, what is the right thing for this client in this situation? So I'm not here to, my budget's a little off this month. I need to go sell some ads for this person, or I need to do a PR program. It is what is going to help them move the needle forward, and how do we pivot very quickly to do that? And our very first value is first for a reason. I think it's the most important. It's I'm curious. And we start with the hiring process and move all the way through. And what I mean by that is I've worked with many, many great PR people in consumer packaged goods and travel and tourism, and a lot of things that we don't do. And if that's your passion, chances are when you go home at night or you close the laptop at night in this world of remote work, right? I tend to gravitate towards, I want to watch the Apple keynote. I want to pay attention to some podcasts about tech. And most of my staff does too. Not that we don't have other interests. We do, I promise. But paying attention to that. And if you can't wait to stop working on what your assignment is and start reading, if you like to travel and Condé Nast Traveler is what you go to at night, you're probably not going to notice a lot of things that are good for your clients. And so it's actually why I made the decision that I made. I had a great time at Coors. I loved it, and I certainly enjoyed beer, but I thought technology was a more interesting marketing and communications challenge for me personally than consumer packaged goods. And I don't mean to say it's harder or easier. I just mean to say I found that more interesting than CPG. So I'm going to, because I'm curious about that, I'm going to do better in that area than I would in CPG, just even if the skill set is across the board, because that natural curiosity, what can I do? How can I make it better? Have I looked under every rock? Have I thought of everything? Is this the best solution? Have I challenged myself to do it? That's what makes a really good communicator, I think. It's not just, here's a 30-second ad, and then I'll do another one, and here's a press release, and then I'll do another one. It's what's the best tactic? What's the best way to approach that tactic? And have I been curious to look at what competition's doing, what the market's saying? Great, easy example, but great example. It would be a really bad idea to send a tech press release launching a small product the same day that Apple was holding its here's all the new iPods, right? So you've got to really be immersed in those markets. So curiosity to me is if I find a great example, if I do an interview with someone, I say, well, what questions do you have for me? And they say, well, not really. I'm a little taken aback by that. It's like, aren't you curious? I mean, yes, you can read a website, but tell me more about this. Tell me how this happened. Why did you do this?
Right. That curiosity goes a long way. It sounds like research and coming up with various ideas that are effective create a better communicator.
Exactly.
So your career has been marked by a commitment to tackling the hard stuff. Can you share an example of a particularly challenging project and how you overcame it or made it successful?
Sure. One that comes to mind, we've worked for a number of years now with a company called Vaisala, and they are headquartered in Helsinki, Finland, but a global company. And they are a sensor company. They make things that measure things. So they've had sensors on every Mars rover that's gone out, for example. They make sensors that sit in art museums to make sure that the temperature is right for, priceless paintings and the humidity is right, those types of things. They also have a whole division that focuses on weather measurement, so different ways to measure the environment. And one of the things that they make is called a dropson, and it looks like a kind of a really big tube. If you had a big giant roll of paper towel, it would be about that big, and it's about that big around. And it's the thing. So if you've ever seen the B-roll footage of those crazy people that fly over the top of hurricanes and
Okay.
to take the measurements.
Yeah.
So part of what they do is they drop my client's product out of the plane and it falls to its death, as it goes through the hurricane. But the whole time it's doing that, it is sending back data. And that data that's derived from inside of the storm helps meteorologists with tracking accuracy and can improve it by as much as 25%. So it's a really important thing. When you think 25%, that's, here in my neck of the woods, that's the difference between a storm hitting Denver and a storm hitting Cheyenne, Wyoming, if it's a 500-mile storm, right? So it's a lot of differences. So they brought this out, and I think I was the only one at the table without a couple of PhDs, and they were showing this to me, and I said, "That's really interesting. Can I have a dozen of them or so? Take the batteries out." And these PhDs looked at me like, "Why? What do you want?" And so I said, "Well, we're going to send them in advance of hurricane season to NBC, CBS, Weather Channel, you name it, and." When they go into those news cycles where there's a hurricane bearing down and they've got to have things to talk about, right? So what we did was package it up. We worked with the folks at NOAA, which is the organization that actually flies the planes. We got some B-roll footage of these planes flying over hurricanes. I'll pass, thank you. And then, using our product and kind of cut to the chase, we got nice coverage, but we also got a great picture of Al Roker holding one of our products with the Vaisala sticker on it, which it really doesn't have, on the NBC Nightly News. And so it was a way to take this abstract thing that does this very important thing and make it really interesting and tell that story So when Al Roker needs something, it hasn't turned, there's nothing to report on. But let's take a few minutes and talk about something that's interesting and hurricane related and how cool this is. And so then let's come back to your question about, it's got to be results oriented. It's got to go that direction. Think about now when I'm a salesman for Vizsla and I would like to go to an automobile manufacturer and say, hey, we make really good sensors. We'd like to talk to you as you move into driverless automobiles. And look, here's something that we do. We do the Mars rover. Here's Al Roker holding one of our parts on the nightly news. Don't you want to trust a company with that kind of experience and expertise to make sure that the car does what it's supposed to do? And the story didn't stop with Al Roker. A whole new project started with that photo.
Interesting. That sounds like a fascinating product. I'm sure you learned so much working on that account as well.
Oh, it's incredible. It's fun at cocktail parties, I will say that. But just fun little things. Like I got a call one day from one of their very senior people who was quite excited about a lightning strike very close to the North Pole. And not being a meteorologist, I'm like, so tell me more, say more about this. And he said, that's not supposed to happen. That's about rarity. I've never seen a stroke this close. They have a series of sensors so they can sense when lightning strikes anywhere on planet Earth and how long it's connected for and all those things.
Wow.
So it was like, it's not, so we've never seen this. He said, I spent the morning doing calculations to make sure the equipment wasn't wrong. And sure enough, it's not wrong. So when you think about that, and that leads into the climate change, it takes, heat and moisture make lightning or very important. And neither one of those things are supposed to be at the North Pole. So the fact that we're starting to see that is another indicator that can be studied by meteorologists to understand the effects of a changing climate. And so that to me is really exciting. You probably tell I get like kind of wound up talking about that. And I just think that's really cool that it's almost one of those look what we can do as a species moments. Like there's people in the world that could figure out how to measure that and understand it. I want to chat with those folks.
Right. Yeah. With all those PhD trained professionals. Absolutely. And when you mentioned being interested in technology, my mind originally went to websites and like software and different things like that. But I didn't think about technology that would be applied to weather. But that's also a part of your portfolio at Comprise, which is really interesting. So Comprise experienced 154% growth over 3 years. So what strategies and practices were key to achieving this growth?
As funny as this sounds, what we started to do was narrow the market that we spoke to instead of broaden the market that we spoke to.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, could we build a website for the new Italian restaurant here in Boulder? We absolutely could. But you know what? There's a lot of people that can do that. There's people that specialize in the service industry. They would probably know some things that we don't know about that industry. So we're not the best for that job, even though we could do a fine job. And I think there were, anytime you have a business, you do this. If somebody calls and they want to hire you, you kind of get to that point of, how can I make this work? And what we really did instead was to say, what do we do best? And who are the people that really need this service and who can appreciate it a lot? And therefore we can charge, I don't want to say a premium, but we can charge because we're delivering something that not just every agency up and down the street can do. One of my favorite examples is we helped with branding and website development for a company called New Iridium. And Iridium, I didn't know this until I started working with them, is a catalyst that's used in a lot of pharma manufacturing to cause it. But it's radioactive, it's expensive, it's kind of dangerous. And these folks have figured out a way to replace iridium with certain kinds of light. And it's not 100% replacement. It doesn't work in every case, but there are times when you can replace iridium with light, which is faster and cheaper and safer and all those kind of good things. And I met them because I was judging a pitch contest for a
What kind of
prize.
contest?
I'm sorry, a pitch contest. So it was entrepreneurs pitching, right?
Okay.
As though they were asking for funding, and they won various prizes. I think there are some cash prizes, and one of the prizes was an hour with me to work on, bounce strategy ideas off and start to work on things. And I watched their presentation, and I love technology, and I consider myself pretty bright. And I had no idea what they did. I knew it was pharma. It seemed important. The pharma people in the room seemed really enamored by it, and I was lost. And then I found out that they want an hour with me to do strategy. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to figure this out. So I read their website 2 or 3 times, and it wasn't very good at the time. And they fully admit that. And telling their story. And so after sitting with them for like 20 minutes, I went, oh, I get it. It does this. And of course, the founder and CEO was like, well, that's a gross oversimplification. But it's a start to understanding. And so we help them really evolve their logo, their look, everything. So it looks like a company that a big pharma organization can say, okay, these guys are professionals. We can trust them. We can bring them in. We're doing life and death things every day. And I think even a really, really good web design shop that didn't have the basis in technology and the curiosity and the desire to learn would have struggled with that story. And I just looked at it as a really cool challenge. And our team put together some great work, and it was just a pleasure to work with them.
And I love that even though you didn't know about them or the industry, you still stepped up and said, yes, I will work with you, and that you were honest with them. Because I think in that honesty of saying, I don't really know what you're doing, I can't gather that information from your website, you were able to offer them value to create communication and a story that people could understand.
So you're right. We didn't, and I fully admit it. I watch your presentation. I don't know what it is that you do. But we came into it again with that curiosity and a willingness to dive in and figure it out. And also, I think that base understanding that they don't need to talk to everybody up and down the street. This is a B2B thing, but it's got to be understandable for potential investors, for reporters that may want to cover it, for even their customers. You're talking to a purchasing person at a large pharma company. You need to be able to, at least in one sentence, get them to go, oh, okay, I think this is something we want to take a look at. And I think not understanding the market could cause one of two problems. One is that seems really hard and I don't get it. So I'm not going to try much harder. Or I need to make this so exciting, like the new Italian place down the street, right? I want everybody to come. No, you don't need everybody to come. You need the right people to come. So we never, ever use the phrase dumb it down. What we do is we make it compelling, we make it understandable, we make it actionable. That doesn't mean dumbing it down. That means making it appropriate for the audience that you need. So sometimes you're going to speak differently. I promise you that the presentation the CEO made is perfect for a group of scientists at a pharma company. It might not be so perfect for a reporter, even somebody that writes about pharma and pharma manufacturing, because it was pretty, there were a lot of formulas on those slides, let's put it that way. And helping clients understand where they need to meet their audiences is a lot of fun.
And you enjoy that. So that's great that you embrace that challenge. You emphasize delegation over allegation. So how do you foster a culture of trust and accountability within your team?
I had a wonderful mentor, a gentleman named Joe Fuentes, who to this day, unfortunately, we lost Joe about 14 years ago, but to this day, I kind of stop and think, well, how would Joe have handled that situation? And one of the things that Joe said to me early on in my career, I had no one reporting to me, but he said, I try to manage in such a way that you don't want to let me down, not because you're afraid of being in trouble, but because you just don't want to let me down. And I thought that was such a great way to approach people that, yes, we demand excellence. We want to be excellent. And I want people that want to do excellent work, but I want people to want to do it because they wouldn't want to let their client down. They wouldn't want to let their immediate supervisor down. They don't want to let me down. You don't want me on the phone with a very upset client because you forgot to do something. I think is so important to really have people step up. And it's back to that curiosity. It's an I statement. I want to do this. And I want people that I want them to take credit. I want them to feel good about it. And, I love to come in and brainstorm and help out even as CEO, but I want to walk into a room not to, what do you think we should do? What's next? We're thinking about these options. Can you help us kind of flow through it? And I think the same thing, I insist the same thing with clients. I've worked with and I've managed agencies that kind of come into a meeting and say, okay, what's our next press release? And sometimes that's the right question. But I want to at least start with, hey, notice this going on in the market. How does that affect you? How does that affect this product that we're working on for 2 months down the road? What's happening here? So it becomes a collaborative discussion. My company and my employees and me are not waiters. When you go in, it's like, what do you have? Hamburger, medium rare, that's great. Off we go. Instead, we want to be consultative and say, understand what your end game is. Knowing that, let's back off these 4 steps and let's look at that.
It sounds like you really offer value to your clients.
I like to think so. They stay with us. We tend to have long runs with clients. And so I think that is often the case. But nothing makes me feel better, honestly, than when I get those, quick messages, even just a quick email. It's like, hey, I just want to really thank you because so-and-so has been just such a great asset. Wow, this is really incredible. This is good work. And I'm kind of the opinion now that, and I mean this in a good way, the less I hear from my clients, the better things are going. That means they're happy, things are happening. And we have a very, the Comprise way is structured. We meet with clients weekly, we do reports. And so I can keep an eye on things. And I love it when I'm called into brainstorming, but it's not, we called in Doyle because we weren't getting anywhere. We called in Doyle because sometimes he adds an extra 5%. And I think that's when you've got a great team.
Yes, I can see that you really cultivate ownership, which every great leader does. So I applaud you for that. So what advice do you have for emerging leaders on staying disciplined and process-oriented in their approach?
I'm going to come back to that word curious again.
Okay.
You could call it lifelong learning. You can call it all sorts of different things. But I've said this before. Missy Franklin has a swim coach, right? She swam the backstroke faster than any human being on the planet had ever done. And she still has a coach, right? Tom Brady had a coach. And I think when you stop looking for new ideas, new ways of doing things, even if it's not a wholesale change, if you can just say, all right, that was a really interesting thing. I'd like to work that into what it is that we do. I think you can get stale real fast. And in all of business anymore is moving, if you think about the sum of human knowledge between 1800 and 1900, and then 1900 and 2000, it was, a hockey stick. And so you kind of have to move fast to keep up. And when I walk into a room, I might not know how to code a website, but I can have a really good conversation with my team, my clients, about what this website needs to do and how we can make it work. And I jump in and try to understand as much as I need to have really good conversations. I never want to be the boss that I come in and they go, let him talk. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And then when he leaves, we can get some work done. So I want to make sure that it's always additive. And I think in order to do that, you shouldn't be able to step in and do every job necessarily down to the tactics, but you need to understand why the tactics exist, what they're doing, and why those tactics were recommended. And I think in order to do that, you got to be a lifelong learner. Things just move too fast.
Right. And how do you, keeping with that theme of curiosity, how do you continue to learn and evolve as a leader in such a dynamic field?
I'm a huge believer in podcasts. I love, and my wife laughs because I listen to them at 1.5 speed. And I listen to a lot of podcasts that she listens to on public radio. I mean, she listens to the actual show. And when I get in her car, it sounds like they're all drunk because it's like, why are they talking so slow? And, but, I have a little list for the shower and I like to, if I'm gonna, go out for a bike ride or something, put them in at low volume. And when I exercise, I listen to those. I also really like book summaries. I mean, I love books and I read a lot. I love literature. You absorb and you read the words and you think about how the sentences are structured and how the story comes together. Sometimes some business books are just, I need to get like, what are the top four things here? And then if something really resonates, you can go deeper and go some different directions. So I kind of try to separate those two as much as possible. And just, I'm kind of a great believer. It's like, if I'm doing the wash, which we all got to do, I can throw some headphones in and listen to part of a podcast and just kind of have fun. And it makes my staff nuts, I think, sometimes, because I'll come out of the shower in the morning and I'll jump on Slack and go, hey, I just heard this thing for this client that could be really cool. Check this out. And they're like, what are you doing in the morning? It's like, shower podcast.
Hey, some people get their best ideas in the shower, right? So
That's exactly right. Well, and that kind of comes full circle to the curiosity. If I was listening to a book on tape, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but
mhm.
I probably wouldn't have an idea for my client. So that's why and yet I enjoy it. I'm not forcing myself to listen to things I don't want to. I'm naturally interested. So when an idea or a trend or something that we should think about pops up, it's actually really fun to toss that into the daily routine.
Right. And I love that you're demonstrating that you are naturally a good communicator. You're talking about sentence structure. And I love that you bring up the idea of book summaries because I really haven't heard that idea before. And as an entrepreneur and as a family guy, time is so important, time management. And so to be able to extract the top ideas
And
from a book through a summary, that's ingenious. So really appreciate that idea. So, as someone with a strong background in communications, how do you empower your team to think creatively and embrace risk?
it starts with the people that you hire. And one of my favorite interview questions, being a sports guy, is all right, fourth and goal, 1 yard away, 2 seconds left on the clock, you're down by four. Do you want the ball? And people kind of lean back and go, and I said, I don't want you to give me the answer that you think I want. I want you to tell me what's going on. And
Mm,
I will admit, I look for people that say, I want the ball, or give me a good reason why. You know what? In fact, I have a guy that works for me who actually played on the line for the University of Georgia as a football player. He
mhm.
said, no, I don't want the ball. I can do the team more good right there. That's also a great answer, right? So what I'm looking for is somebody to tell me that it's like, yeah, I want to stick my neck out. I want to do it. Or here's where I see my role is playing there. And I'd say the majority of my team kind of said, uh, yeah, I don't play football. I'm a, 5'6" female, but I get your point. And yeah, put me in the game, put me in front of the camera, do this thing. And I think when you've got that natural ability, you don't want people to be reckless, but you never want them to be afraid. And
Mhm.
so it's, I'll give you a great example. One of my folks, we have another weather client that does one of the most popular, if not the most popular, I'm not sure, weather app, an app called My Radar. And a reporter was looking for people that could talk about being without power for several days and what do you suggest and how do you prepare in case it happens and all those kind of things. And she had the great idea to pitch one of our meteorologists who also happens to be a storm chaser. So he could talk
Okay.
about, if I'm chasing tornadoes and my battery dies, that can be life or death. So
Mm,
what are some things that I do? And that connection, I think a lot of people might not have made. And she
right.
just made it, got a great story out of it. The client was really happy. And we're starting to get, that is one of our clients that we would love to have you download My Radar. So all of a sudden you see, wow, My Radar actually employs meteorologists that are storm chasers. I bet they have good weather information. Let's download that. And so let's try that out. So I love those kind of things. And I think that's a great example of not reckless at all. If Matt would have said, I don't know what to tell you. That doesn't make sense. But he was excited about it. The reporter was excited about it. And the worst thing that could have happened was he said no. And instead, we got a really nice piece of coverage for our client.
Hmm. So it sounds like having your team be able to take risks and think creatively out of the box really produces some of your greatest work.
it, you know, there are myriad companies out there that can write a press release and it will be
Hmm.
fine. Are there myriad companies out there that can connect dots like that, that can look at a drop zone and go, that could be fun. They could say, I bet the Storm Chaser could do a great job with that interview. That's what you bring to the table. Otherwise, um, it's I kind of tell my staff we're all unemployed every day at 5, and hopefully all the clients come back tomorrow at 8. I mean, it's not quite that extreme, but we've got to perform every day, and that's critical. And if we don't, we become a commodity that when it's time for budget cuts, boy, let's look there first.
Mm, very good points. So, what advice would you give to young creatives who are looking to turn their passion into a sustainable career?
Um, One thing I always tell people is to be really honest with yourself. One of my passions is football, obviously. And there are this many opportunities in the marketplace to make football or communicating about football or playing football a full-time job, right? That's not really there. So I think sometimes people get too pigeonholed where maybe you'd be really happy working in sports in general, and there's more opportunities there, or maybe you can do sports education or sports fitness or sports counseling. There's all sorts of things. So understand your passion, but make sure it's not, if I don't work for the Denver Broncos, I'm not going to be happy because you know, their PR guy was there for 40 years until Jim went someplace, there was not an opening, right? So I think that's really, really important to always remember. And then also understand that you can have different passions. I love to watch football on the weekend, and that's a great escape. Doesn't take away from my passion about technology and great communication, some of those things, but you can have more than one thing. And then you can oftentimes kind of cross-pollinate.
Hmm.
There are times when I go back to something that works really well in consumer packaged goods and think, how can that apply over here? Or how can this thing that we did with beer make sense? Not that you're trying to fit them together, but it's like, that might not be a bad idea. One of the things that I've done for a number of companies is, back in the Coors days when we were having some trouble and the union was having an active strike against us. And, here are these poor guys dressed in a Coors shirt. They're just trying to deliver the beer. They got a job to do. They're driving a truck. They're bringing the beer in. And somebody wants to stop and engage them and ask them about the politics of the Coors family. It's like, I've got 10 cases of beer here. I've got places to be. So they're about the size of a business card and they were trifold. And we
Hmm.
called them, We're Glad You Asked. It was just a series and we customized them for each state. And we talked about, we created this many jobs, we did this. So that he could just pop it in his shirt pocket, have 5 or 6 of them. And if somebody wanted to engage, he could, hey, I'm not an expert in this, but here's something you might like to look at. Do you know how many great places that basic idea can work when you've got a situation of, I need my employees to not be experts, but to also not just say, oh, I don't know anything about that. I bet I've used that tactic for a dozen companies over the years, for trade shows, for all sorts of different things, that because it worked. It's not that I tried to fit it in there. It's like, wouldn't it be great if we had the opportunity to do something like this? And I can pull out this little mini trifold brochure and people go, wow, that's pretty cool. So, coming back around to your passion, it's, make sure that sometimes your passion is more broad than you think it is. And you can have all these different interests. And so find one that, kind of one of my big jokes, I've got a lot of friends in the cycling community, and a bunch of them have done almost borderline volunteer work to get free bike frames. And I said, you know what? I want to work for tech companies that will pay me money and then I'll buy a bike frame. And it all works out. So I get to feed all my passions, but I'm not so pigeonholed into something that if there's a change in the market, well, that's all I know. So I'm done now as a career.
Right. It's important to be able to pivot. That is an important aspect in maintaining longevity in a career for sure. And a common theme I'm hearing is really being able to see the opportunity in a challenge or a crisis. You've mentioned that several times throughout our interview. In addition to recruitment here at Elysian, I also do coaching and consulting to help empower the minds of leadership and of employees through my certification as a dream builder coach and life mastery consultant. And so a lot about what you're talking about as far as taking risk, seeing opportunities, that's learned in those particular programs. So I love that you're talking about this. This is so valuable for our audience. So can you talk about the importance of community involvement in shaping both personal and professional success?
Absolutely. It's something that I'm personally passionate about. It's something that we do as an organization. I encourage every one of my people to get involved, to be on boards, to do what, and again, this is a great chance to try something else. If your passion is music and you want to be on the board of the local symphony like I am, great, go do it. And I think it does a couple of things. One, what a great opportunity, even for younger professionals, 20s and 30s that are coming up, to kind of see how others, they're going to work on a board with all sorts of different kinds of people that they don't see in day-to-day life. They're going to be suddenly a peer with some people that they might not otherwise get to know and get to rub elbows with. And they're going to see how something else functions differently. How can you pull something from there? Ooh, that's a good idea for this client over here. So I think that's important. Two, I think it's just important to give back to the community. It's not fair to just take. So I think it's really important to give back and give some time. So we do that as a company. We've done that quite often. And perhaps most importantly is, I think that getting to, a board is an important thing. Even a small nonprofit board, that's an important thing. Chances are, if the nonprofit's big enough to have a board, that's probably a 7-figure budget and up, or high six, certainly. If you're a 23, 24, 25-year-old professional, you might not have the opportunity to manage budgets like that, to be a part of those conversations, to see how other professionals in other verticals, if you will. It's great for me to sit on the board with a couple of CPAs, because they're looking at the bottom line, and I'm like, hey, but it'd be cool if we did this. So I think all of that is just so important. And I've seen companies, and I think Boulder really does this a lot, but I've seen companies move to Boulder and then kind of not get involved. And it's not that they're shunned or ostracized, but they're just not kind of around. And the companies that come in, even very large companies, Google is a great example. We've got a large Google presence here. They're on committees at the local chamber. They're around the community. They're speaking at places. They joined our community. And I think that is such a good thing for a company. A lot of times for companies and for individuals, I look at some of these things that I refer to it as the savings account. And as with any savings account, if you don't make a deposit when you need to make a withdrawal, there's nothing there. And everybody, personally, professionally, companies, individuals, stubs their toe from time to time. So if I say something that maybe wasn't the most appropriate thing, I think I've built a savings account where enough people might say, yeah, that seems a little out of character for him. He must have been having a bad day, as opposed to, who's this guy? Nobody even knows who he is, and he said something obnoxious. I think that works for companies. Google, if they do something that people are upset about, yeah, but they sponsor all the Wi-Fi on Boulder's Pearl Street Mall. They do this, they've given this, they've sponsored this, they make this available. So I think that building your personal and professional savings account is just a smart thing to do, but it's also the right thing to do. I really don't care if I ever get a single client from sitting on the board of the Boulder Symphony. I care about the Boulder Symphony, and it's a lot of fun. And I appreciate the opportunity to bring the skills that I have to that organization.
So I'm hearing that it's really an investment of time, energy that companies are making. And it sounds like the example with Google, that they're also respecting the community by showing involvement and giving back. And that goes a long way.
I think so. I think absolutely you're right. The gentleman who founded SketchUp, which sold to Google, which is the reason they have an organization here, and he went on to become the site director until he retired, is a personal friend of mine. And the other day, it was great to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody with that resume and
Mm,
say, can I bounce something off you in my personal life? I'm just curious what you thought about this. And he was happy to take 15 minutes and say, yeah, here's what I think and here's what's going on. I would not know him without both of us being involved in the community. And now
mhm.
I know he feels comfortable calling me. I feel comfortable calling him. So it's that's just a really good thing. And it's, and everybody's got to have boundaries, but I'm flattered when somebody calls and says, hey, can your company throw me a couple hours to help out with this? If it's at all possible to say yes, I do the very best I can.
Great. That's wonderful. Well, you've received numerous awards, including being named one of BizWest's top 50 most influential business leaders. So, what does this recognition mean to you, and how does it inspire your work?
I always use the word humbling, and I really, really mean that. I'm truly humbled when I get an award, even if it's one of those awards that you had to apply for, right? It's
Yeah.
still humbling to get that award. For me personally, it does a couple of things. It validates the way I'm running my company, living my life. But I think even more importantly, the personal awards are great. I'm really more proud of being on Inc. magazine's Partner list 2 years running. And we've been Agency of the Year with Business Intelligence 4 years running. Early in my career, I was like, yeah, whatever, the work speaks for itself. And what I learned moving forward is it's really great for a young professional to say, I was on the team that did the project that won this award. That's really cool, really validating. And I think that's really important. It's I think it's less, if I'm going out and pitching a piece of business, somebody's looking for an award-winning agency. Can we check that box? Yes, we absolutely can. It's still going to come down to fit. But I think the important part of that is employees are proud. I mean, when you walk into our main office, there's all these trophies of work that these people have done that has been recognized by their peers. And that's something that has to come from outside. I can't, yes, we have our own awards here and they're important, but to get an award from an organization for your work is that 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 really moves the ball forward, I think, with people taking pride in what they're doing, pride in the company, pride in their teammates, and that's important.
Hmm. Great. So, what role do you think recognition plays in motivating teams and fostering a culture of excellence?
At the end of the day, I don't think anybody would work for me if I said, well, it's a volunteer position, but I'm going to praise you every 3 hours. That's probably not going to work. But I think the converse is also true. Pay's good, everything's great, but I don't feel heard, I don't feel seen, I don't feel recognized. That's not going to work either. When we went on Slack, this years ago now, hard to believe, but one of the first channels that we put up was a thanks channel. And the culture here that we want is it's great to say thanks to people one-on-one. And it should happen. But it's even better to say, I want to call out Jennifer today for this thing that she did because it was the Comprise way. It was above and beyond the call. Thank you so much. And then everybody can go on and put an emoji and a party hat and a taco and all sorts of things. And so you're recognizing through your peers. I've read a lot of studies that especially the younger generations coming up really feel that that's critical. And it's an important part of the mix. And I'm starting to see, it's like salary benefits, upward mobility, and recognition I would kind of put those as the big four of what people want to see. And I think recognition, little things like, you got a $25 Starbucks gift card. Thank you so much for all your work done publicly. Honestly, goes almost as far as $1,000 bonus. And I don't mean to say that bonuses and good wages are important, but sometimes I think company leaders overthink the investment that needs to be made when it's more just a really, if we didn't have the Hey Thanks channel, I think we would be a different company.
Hmm. That's very good advice for a leader who's looking to grow and inspire a team. So you're passionate about mountain biking, road cycling, and spending time with your family in addition to football. So how do these activities fuel your creativity and balance your professional life?
One of two ways. Mountain biking I like, and I love to downhill bike. So my favorite place is Winter Park here in Colorado, but you literally put your bike on the chairlift like you're going skiing. You get
Mhm.
on the chair behind and then you bomb down the hill like you were on skis, but you're on a bike.
Wow.
That's fun because you have to be 100% focused on the moment. Yeah, you daydream there. I mean, there's times when you're going 25, 30 miles an hour and your handlebars are here and the trees are here. I mean, you don't have a lot of room to roam. And I think sometimes it's good you can't be pondering a problem. You can't be thinking about sales. You got to be dialed in. And so that's really fun sometimes to just go, boy, for this next 20 minutes, I'm thinking about one thing and one thing only, and that's, not coming off my bike. Um, Road cycling, on the other hand, is kind of a nice way. And I've ridden in groups, but I tend to like to just go out by myself for a couple of hours. It's a great way to put in a podcast, and I keep the volume low so people don't write in and say, he's not being safe on the road. A lot of times I only wear one, but I like to hear some words, but I want to hear what's going on around me. But that's a great time to just go, I've got 2, 3 hours and I can just kind of ponder something and turn it over and think about it. And you're in a different environment. You're not sitting and staring at a computer screen. You're watching traffic on one side and in beautiful Boulder County on the other side. That sometimes can give you a really different perspective on something you've been noodling on. So that's a lot of fun too. And I did PR for the Coors Wellness Center. We had our own huge gym at Coors. And the guy who ran it was such an influence on me. I learned so much from him. But Max used to say, you never waste time exercising because you always get that time back. Either you're more productive, so you feel better, you don't need to sleep as much, and so I've always just kind of felt that. It's like I didn't blow 3 hours a day riding a bike. I was thinking, I was doing some things. My body's in better shape. I feel better. I'm more alert, all those kind of things. I think, you know, I, I, I've known a lot of people in HR, and this has really been drilled into me. And this is big in the startup market.
Mhm.
I hear people say, "I work 70 hours every week." It's like, no, you don't. You might be sitting at your desk, and you might have fingers poised on keyboards, and you might be doing something, but you're not truly at the top of your productivity for 70 hours a week in and week out. The human brain doesn't work that way.
Mm.
It's like I can't ride my bike 42 hours straight. It doesn't work that way. I need to rest. And brains need to rest too. So I think having some time to recognize that it's not just, I have a colleague that swims. He's a well-known long distance swimmer. He swam Lake Pontchartrain. He's swam in rivers. And he talks about just getting in that groove and getting there. And he comes to work and he's like, now I'm ready to go. As opposed to, I didn't eat right. I slept late. I'm kind of groggy, 3 cups of coffee. Maybe by 10:30, I'll do something productive. So I think it's a whole package, and you need to take care of the whole package.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. So, is there anything else you'd like to share about your experience that you think could inspire our listeners?
Um, if I were to say one thing, I think sometimes in American business we idolize people who have some pretty large flaws, and I'll tell it this way: even if I have to let somebody go, and even if it's for a performance reason, I don't want them to leave my company feeling bad. It's like, look, this isn't the right fit. It's not working. Sorry, this didn't, we all went into this as well. So I think in business, people don't talk about kindness enough. I believe you can have a direct, difficult conversation without losing kindness. But I think you can be kind and respectful while still expecting good performance, while still expecting you got to show up on time, you got to do what you're supposed to do. That never needs to be disrespectful. One thing that I truly believe is that you praise publicly and you reprimand privately whenever possible. And in the age of social media, I kind of have an issue with some college level coaches who, for the sake of a great piece on TikTok, chewing out their team in front of the whole world. And it's like, I've coached, sometimes teams need to be chewed out. That's us in the locker room. That's not for the world to see. But when it's time to celebrate the victory, that's for the world to see. And I think I've had employees that didn't work out. I've had employees that working for me didn't work out for them. But I hope that they went away with at least that wasn't the right fit, but I was treated with respect.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. No, I think that goes a long way. So I appreciate all that you've shared. And thank you so much for participating in my show, Doyle. I'd love to have you back on my show again to hear more about your achievements and the impact you are making in the PR and digital marketing world.
Happy to join you anytime. I'll pontificate whenever you ask.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Doyle. And thank you for joining my show, Empowering Creatives to Live Their Dreams. I'm Jessica Osrek. You can do it. I believe in you.